ask. Jason Miller is the Senior Communications Advisor for Donald J. Trump for President. This is his first Sunday morning interview since joining the campaign in June. Jason, great to see you this morning.
Brian, thanks for having me on.
I think what many political pros, as I mentioned, are wondering is why is Donald Trump continuing to respond to Mr. Khan rather than either staying quiet, allowing Mr. Khan to speak without being challenged, or to acknowledge more forthrightly the pain this family is going through?
Well, let me go and correct you on that point, Brian. Mr. Trump has praised Mr. Khan and in fact has called Captain Khan a hero. But look, let's be clear about what's going on here. Is that this is
that happened after the fact, though. That's happened in a statement last night.
In the ABC interview, Mr. Trump praised Mr. Khan, and
he called Mr. Khan a nice guy.
Yeah, he praised Mr. Khan. But again, Brian, let's get back to what's going on here. The fact this is about radical Islamic terrorism. And what we have to do as a country to make sure that our borders are safe and to make sure that we're screening people who are coming into this country. That's the larger debate that's going on here. That's not what Mr. Khan's
speech was about on Thursday. Let me put on screen a statement from Mr. Trump last night. He seemed to be trying to clean up the ABC interview. In the statement last night, Trump said the following. He said that Mr. Khan has no right to speak the way he did on stage. Let me get the exact quote because I don't want to misquote Mr. Trump. Let's see if we can put it on screen here. He said that Mr. Trump, while I feel deeply for the loss of his son, Mr. Khan, who has never met me, has no right to stand in front of millions of people and claim that I have never read the Constitution, which is false, and say many other inaccurate things. The First Amendment to the Constitution allows Mr. Khan the right to stand on stage and say whatever he wants. Why would Mr. Trump say he doesn't have that right?
That's not what Mr. Trump is saying at all. What he's saying
That's what the statement said.
What he's saying is that Mr. Trump has a right to defend himself, and to make clear what he's saying is this is about radical Islamic terrorism. For him to be criticized like that, he didn't think was fair. So let's get back to the broader point here, the fact that the media is completely
Let's
leaving
put the statement back on screen. The statement on screen says Mr. Khan has no right to say what he said. You and I, Jason, we both know Mr. Khan has the right to say whatever he wants to say, right?
Brian, Mr. Khan, this is about radical Islamic terrorism, and this is about what's really going on here, and the fact that media doesn't want to pick up and cover what's going on with this country. I mean, where was the media outrage following Cleveland when we had supporters and survivors of those who either been hurt or killed by illegal aliens in this country? There was no media outrage following that. But again, what we're talking about here is radical Islamic terrorism, and that's what's important.
You keep mentioning radical Islamic terrorism as if that's somehow linked to Mr. Khan. Why do you keep responding that way when I mention him?
Because that's the broader debate that we're having. The broader debate that we're having is about the screening and the vetting that we're having for people who are coming into this country, about the...
But that has nothing to do with this family, with this Muslim American family.
This is what the whole broader debate is about right now. This is not about Mr. Trump and Mr. Khan. This is about Mr. Trump and Hillary Clinton.
But Mr. Khan is making it about Mr. Trump, saying he has a black soul, saying that he's ignorant, and you keep bringing up radical Islamic terrorism instead. Are you trying to change the subject, or are you trying to link him to terrorism?
No, not at all, Brian. That's not what I'm saying. Don't try to put words in my mouth. What I'm saying is that this is the broader issue that we're debating. Mr. Trump's opponent is Hillary Clinton, and that's who we're running against here.
So you and I, we're not here to debate, but Mr. Trump and Hillary Clinton are here to debate in what, 57, 58 days? Let me ask about the debates, because this weekend Trump said the schedule for the debates is unacceptable. Let's put it on screen. He put up a tweet that said the first debate, well, actually, let's show the debate calendar first, put it in perspective for people. The first debate here is on September 26th, then there's one on October 4th. Then there's one on October 9th, the second presidential debate. And two of these debates do conflict with NFL games. Now, this isn't a big surprise, since two NFL games also aired on the same nights as debates back in 2012. But here's what your boss said this morning on ABC's This Week.
Well, I'll tell you what I don't like. It's against two NFL games. I got a letter from the NFL saying, this is ridiculous. Why are the debates against? Because the NFL doesn't want to go against the debates.
What's confusing about that statement, Jason, is that the NFL refuted it, saying, quote, while we'd obviously wish the debate commission could find another night, we did not send a letter to Trump. Can you help me understand why Trump said he did receive a letter from the NFL?
Yeah, let me go and take a step back here, Brian, for a moment. Our posture and our position on the debates is we want as many people, as many voters to be participants in and to see the debates as possible, which is different from the Clinton campaign. So you look at these first two debates, where the first debate is coming up head-to-head against Monday Night Football. It's a Falcons home game. Georgia, an important state. The second debate is coming up for a Packers home game. That's on a Sunday Night Football, which usually has about 20 million viewers. So big audiences. Wisconsin is a very important state. We want as many people to be participants and be involved in the presidential debate process as possible. Now, these initial dates that are put out there by the commission are planning dates. The campaigns haven't even started their negotiations yet, which will start this next week. Our posture, we want debates. We want as many people seeing them as possible. Now, going back to your initial point, Mr. Trump was notified by a source close to the league of these potential conflicts. The Clinton camp knows about these conflicts as well, but apparently that's not a big deal for them. But we want as many people to be involved in this process as possible, and that's our posture.
Did Donald Trump lie when he said he received a letter from the NFL?
He was notified by a source close to the league. And again, the issue here is we want people involved.
Why did he say he received a letter from the NFL?
He was notified by a source close to the NFL.
I don't understand why he told George Stephanopoulos he received a letter then.
I think that, getting into semantics a little bit here, Brian, but the point is that he was notified.
It's not semantics if you send me a letter versus make a phone call.
Brian, he was notified by a source close to the NFL, and this is something the Clinton campaign was notified as well.
Right. Well, the Clinton campaign, I think, probably knew when the debates were scheduled and knew when the football games were scheduled because the calendar for the debates came out in September of last year. The football calendar obviously was set later, but we all know games are on Sundays and Mondays. The commission has told me they have to spread these dates out. They have to do different days of the week. They have to avoid religious holidays. It's a lot of complicated reasons. Are you all saying you would like to see the debate days changed?
We would like the debates to not be head-to-head against major NFL games. We'd like to see some, that's something we'll be discussing as we go into negotiations.
Will Trump skip the debates if they continue to be scheduled on football nights?
Brian, we want as many people to be watching, to be a part of these debates as possible. That's our spirit of it. The Clinton camp would like these debates to be head-to-head with NFL games. So we're going to go in, we're going to start negotiations.
What evidence do we have of that? Because on Friday night, Mr. Trump tweeted the following. He said that Clinton and the Dems are trying to rig the debates. But we know that's not true, Jason. We know the Commission on Presidential Debates chose these dates, and they did not consult with the campaign. Why did Mr. Trump say that Clinton's trying to rig the debates?
Brian, if you take a look back at Hillary Clinton's track record in the primary, numerous occasions they had pushes to go and have debates at the same time as other big events that were going on, head-to-head against things that would be big conflicts and keep voters excluded. Our focus, we want as many people involved as possible.
Hey, listen, so do I. I'm glad we have DVRs and video on demand and YouTube. You know, I woke up every morning after the conventions and watched the speeches on YouTube. And that's how people can watch the debates now, too. Football isn't necessarily the kind of conflict that it was 4 or 8 or 12 years ago, right?
Brian, people are going to watch debates live. They're going to watch football live. And again, we think it's incumbent as we head into this process to make sure that there's few conflicts as possible and we can have as many people participating to make sure the American public is fully informed and educated going into Election Day.
So just to be clear, you all have not yet started negotiations with the commission, but you're going to start negotiations with the commission, which are totally normal for campaigns, and you're going to specifically ask them to move the dates.
Well, we think it's only right that as many people are able to watch the debates as possible.
Do you all have any issues with particular moderators? Will that be another point of negotiation when it talks about the debate schedule?
We look forward to having fair and balanced moderators that are participating in this process. And we think that by the time we finish up the negotiations, we'll be at that point.
I heard fair and balanced. I thought of Fox News. How about Megyn Kelly as a possible moderator?
Megyn Kelly is a fantastic journalist.
So you're not excluding her from the list, perhaps?
I'm not going to start negotiating right here as we're sitting, other than the fact that we want to have as many people participating as possible.
And by the way, the commission chooses the moderators. The campaigns can try to haggle and try to push for different people, but the commission does choose. Let me ask you a couple other questions, Jason, since you're relatively new in the role. You've been with the Trump campaign for about a month. You were formerly working for the Cruz campaign, and I wonder, what's the change been like? How different is it now to work for Mr. Trump?
I'm having a blast with this campaign. This is unlike anything that I think America's really seen in recent history. And quite frankly, as we talk about broader issues, we talk about how the media is covering this campaign. I think one of the things that the media is having a tough time with is how to cover a candidate like Donald Trump, who has tapped into this feeling, this sentiment that people really want change. As we go back to me, that's a huge difference with Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine, as they're running for this third term in the status quo. Mr. Trump's on the side of the 70% of people who want change.
I agree journalists are having a hard time covering this campaign. I think one of the challenges I'm facing right here, right now on live TV is how much to challenge a misstatement that Trump made, for example, as saying the NFL sent him a letter. You're making it out to be not a big deal that actually received a phone call from a source, not from the league. But do you think that the journalists in general are making too big a fuss when they try to fact check Trump's misstatements?
Look, if it's being called both ways and there are balls and strikes being called equally, that's your job. Just as I'd say that last night when Hillary Clinton was in Pennsylvania, there was nothing, I didn't see anything on TV calling out Clinton on TPP and her support for Obama's economy. I mean, that's something that should have been called out. If we're really going to call balls and strikes here, Brian, that's something that the media should have been calling attention to.
What if one candidate says a lot more misstatements than the other candidate? Then we can't be fair about that if one side is saying more misstatements than the other side.
You know, Brian, it's interesting as you talk about media bias. I mean, I think that the biggest aspect of media bias that we're seeing so far in the campaign, again, are things that aren't being covered. Again, as we talk about Hillary's record on TPP, but even beyond that, I mean, let's take a look at you know, how many cable panels do we turn on a daily basis where it's 4 people, 4 guests or moderators who are stacked on the Clinton side, maybe 1 or maybe 2 who are stacked on the Trump side. And so, as we talk about this, you know, the broader issue with the campaign, that's really where I think it is, that I don't think it's being called equally both ways.
Do you think that's true on CNN as well? I think CNN, last time I counted, had 7 people who are paid full-time commentators, not full-time, but paid commentators who specifically support Trump.
We pay attention to all networks, and all networks hear about it if we think that things are on one side and not balanced.
Let me ask you about something in the New York Post this morning. New York Post, Murdoch paper, typically conservative. But this morning, the front page here, Donald Trump's wife, these are nude photos from the 1990s that I guess the Post has newly unearthed. Do you think it's inappropriate for the Post to be putting this on the cover?
Look, these were photos that are 20 years old before Mrs. Trump met Mr. Trump. Their celebration of the human body is art, and nothing to be embarrassed about with the photos. She's a beautiful woman.
Does he get furious when he sees something like that? Does he lash out at the Post?
I think Mr. Trump's a little more focused on the direction of the country and what we need to do to get it turned around.
Because I'm curious what your interactions have been with him. You know, he's such a student of the media. He must have strong opinions about what he sees and reads.
Mr. Trump's very passionate about the direction of the country, wants to make America great again, particularly as we talk about keeping the country safe, as we talk about rebuilding our economy. The other thing I'd say, too, is that it's been a real pleasure to be around the entire Trump family as we talk about meeting his kids and interacting with them. And I think they're really great assets on the campaign trail. And as America gets to see more about Mr. Trump and the family, they'll realize that this is a family ready to head into the White House and make some real change in this country.
I wish we could talk all day, Jason, but one last question for you. There's been a lot of concerns about the so-called blacklist, the Politico, the Washington Post, and other outlets that are not allowed press credentials at Trump rallies. This week, Mike Pence suggested perhaps that's going to change. Can you tell us if you're considering loosening these restrictions on the Washington Post and other news outlets?
We're reviewing all of that, and I think that, again, our events are open. Anybody can come into our events, and so that's the spirit that we've had with the campaign, and that's the spirit that we're going to have going forward.
This week, a Washington Post reporter was actually frisked and not allowed into a Mike Pence rally. That seemed like an even worse step against what we're talking about here, which would be loosening the blacklist.
That's outside. That's not normal for our procedure. That's something that shouldn't happen, and we're reviewing that as we speak.
So you are reviewing this issue more broadly. You are considering giving press credentials back to outlets like the Daily Beast and Huffington Post and Politico and others.
Again, our spirit is we want to have as many people who are in our events and participating in our events as possible. The incident with the Washington Post reporter, again, that's not something that should have happened, and we're reviewing that now.
Jason, I appreciate you being here this morning and taking the questions. It's great talking with you. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Brian.
One of Donald Trump's favorite words is rigged. Now let me tell you why that's a problem for the press. He comes back to this word time and time again.
A rigged system.
Rigged. To rig the system.
Rig the system.
Totally rigged.
Rigged press.
Totally rigged system. The election's going to be rigged.
During the primaries, Trump's tirades against the rigged system were very effective with voters. We all sort of know what he means when he says the word. So now he's expanding on it, saying other things are rigged too, like the media.
We're running against a rigged press. We're running against dishonest people. Okay? Really dishonest people.
That's not true, but Trump certainly is not the first candidate to rail against the media. Here's where he is the first, though, and this is a really troubling first for a presidential candidate. He's saying he's worried the election in November is going to be rigged against him. As you can see here, the comment garnered a lot of headlines this week. even though many experts have come out and said it's a preposterous claim to make. On Thursday, President Obama called it ridiculous.
I don't even really know where to start on answering this question. Of course, the elections will not be rigged. What does that mean? That's ridiculous.
But with all due respect to President Obama, he may not be the best messenger on this subject. Instead, voices who are trusted by Republicans, trusted by Trump's base, should be the ones reassuring people about the integrity of the voting system. So is that happening? No. Conservative media is helping Trump spread doubts without a shred of evidence. Here, let me show you how not to interview a candidate about something as serious as this. This is Sean Hannity just handing Trump the mic. Watch.
You said in a speech today you're afraid this election is going to be rigged. Explain.
Yeah. Well, I've been hearing about it for a long time. And I'm telling you, November 8th, we better be careful because that election is going to be rigged. And I hope the Republicans are watching closely or it's going to be taken away from us.
All right, Mr. Trump, thank you so much for being with us.
That's it? If there were ever time to extend an interview, to challenge a candidate, that was the time. Don't feed me baloney about Hannity's show being only an hour long and that he might have run out of time. This interview was on tape. The producers should have kept it going. Hannity should have asked more questions. Interviewers, even the ones that support the person they're interviewing, have an obligation to probe further and push back when a candidate says something dangerous. And this is dangerous. Suggesting an election is going to be stolen? This is third world dictatorship stuff. Now, maybe Trump's just making excuses for an eventual loss. But here's where the media's role comes in. Journalists cannot just play these sound bites, quote these claims, and then move on to the next subject. We can't just let it seep into the discourse like it's normal. We have to stop and fact check and contextualize. I think the Washington Post did a good job here. The headline says, Trump is wrong, rigging an election is almost impossible. And the New York Times has a helpful Q&A this week explaining that voter fraud sometimes happens, but it's rare, and the reports of misconduct are often overstated in the press. Again, the conservative media is vital here, but Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity both failed their audiences this week. Both men interviewed Trump. In both cases, Trump suggested there was something fishy about the voting in 2012, and then later in the week, Hannity picked up the ball and ran with it, blindly.
Here's an interesting statistic. The Philly Inquirer, 1 week after the 2012 election, pointed out that in 59 separate precincts in inner city Philadelphia, that Mitt Romney did not get a single vote, not one. And according to the Cleveland Plain Dealer, there were 9 precincts in Cleveland alone. Again, not a single Romney vote, not one. Now, maybe I'm conspiratorial.
Okay, let's pause it right there. Yes, Hannity, you are being conspiratorial. A Google search would show that there are also precincts in other states, like in Utah, where Obama did not get a single vote. Hannity's not a journalist, but he has a megaphone, and he's using his megaphone irresponsibly. If a Democratic candidate were saying this stuff, saying the election could be rigged, then every word of this essay would apply to him or her. But right now, it's the Republican candidate for president who is trying to delegitimize our democratic process without proof. It is unpatriotic for any interviewer or any journalist to help him. All year long, I've been hearing one very specific description of the election coverage. No, it's not biased, but it's close. It's false equivalence, meaning journalists who are attempting to cover both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump fairly, who end up drawing false comparisons between the two. I know many Clinton supporters feel this way. Here's another way to frame this idea. When Trump is covered, is he graded on a curve, making it easier for him? Or do these cries of unfairness ring hollow? This morning, I've assembled an all-star panel of 3 veteran journalists to explore these questions. Jacob Weisberg, the chairman and editor-in-chief of the Slate Group and the host of the quasi-daily Trumpcast podcast. Soledad O'Brien, a former anchor on NBC and CNN, now the CEO of Starfish Media Group. And Mark Leibovich, the chief national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine and a CBS News political contributor. Jacob, let me start with you. When you hear the phrase false equivalence, something I've been hearing from Clinton surrogates every single day, what does it mean to you? What does it signify?
I was really concerned we were going to have that it was essentially going to be a process of treating Donald Trump as if he were a normal presidential candidate. You know, the structure of covering politics is you compare an apple and an orange, and they have different attributes, but they're both fruits, and you can take your pick. this case, we have something more like an apple and some rancid meat, excuse the expression.
I'm sorry, is Donald Trump the rancid meat?
He's the rancid meat. And in all sorts of ways. I mean, it's conspiracy thinking and racism. There are all sorts of things that are outside the norm of what we've accepted in American politics. And what I think the press is struggling with is, how do you not normalize him, but at the same time be fair and do your job as a journalist?
So you've already insulted him in the first minute of the show, calling him rancid meat. Is that being fair?
I'm trying. I've started my podcast because I think it's so hard in most media to tell it like it is. Yes, I think Trump is rancid meat. I mean, it's a metaphor. But I think he's someone who's injected a kind of toxicity into American politics that doesn't belong there, that hasn't been there before, that doesn't represent what Republicans have stood for in the past.
So that, or other journalists not calling it like it is, covering Trump like the unique candidate that he is?
I think it's more the contortions to try to make things seem equal all the time. So if you look at Hillary Clinton's speech, where she basically pointed out that what Donald Trump has done actually quite well is normalize white supremacy, one of a long list of things that I think many Americans would find distasteful.
And you would say that's true. The Clinton is right when she says that.
I think she made a very good argument, almost like a lawyer. Here is ways in which he has actually worked to normalize conversations that many people find hateful. And that listen, I've seen on air white supremacists being interviewed because they are Trump delegates, and they do a 5-minute segment, the first minute or so, talking about what they believe is white supremacists, right? So you have normalized that. Then Donald Trump will say, well, Hillary Clinton, she's a bigot. And it's covered, where the journalist part comes in, it's they trade barbs. He says she's a bigot, and she points out that he might be appealing to racists.
He said, she said, he said, she said.
It only becomes he said, she said, when in actuality, the fact that Donald Trump has said she's a bigot, with not the long laundry list of evidence, which if you looked at Hillary Clinton's speech, she actually did have a lot of really good factual evidence that we would all agree are things that have happened and do exist. They're treated as if they're equal. Well, she might be a bigot, he might have ties to racists. They're actually equal, when in reality they're not equal. And I think that's where journalists are failing in the contortions to try to make it seem fair.
But so that may be the default, but I've seen a lot of good examples of the press, I think, doing its job of calling him out and telling it like it is. You know, whether it's you on this show saying there's no basis for him to claim the election's going to be stolen, or the New York Times saying in the front page lead story, Trump presents a threat to the rule of law and the Constitution. Not on the editorial page, but as a news story, because that's fact, not opinion.
So that's a more optimistic take. Mark, let me get your assessment on this. Are you more optimistic or pessimistic about how the press has been trying to treat Trump?
Well, first of all, since we are stepping back, I should step back and say that in fairness, a lot of Hillary Clinton supporters would say that Jacob was just being unfair to rancid meat in comparison.
Oh, boy.
So I believe that, no, I just think that we have to have both sides here. I would say this. Look, I mean, I think there are a few terms here that we're using that I think are kind of flawed. I mean, the whole grading on a curve thing, I mean, no one agrees on the curve anymore. I mean, that's the central problem. I mean, the notion of a curve in, say, math, like in 4th grade math, if this test is graded on a curve, there is an objective number that you are grading on. There is absolutely nothing objective about the agreed upon, whatever. I mean, the more agreed upon argument in our culture that there is one arbiter, whether it's Walter Cronkite or Tim Russert or whoever, that can decide. So, I mean, I think the notion here of sort of false equivalency, whatever you want to call it, is not so much to strain to compare both candidates to one another, but to compare them basically to the truth, to actually use your platform as a journalist to say, look, I mean, what Donald Trump just said has no basis in fact, or Hillary Clinton has said this, in fact, she has not given a press conference in 200 and however many days. I mean, I do think that it is incumbent upon reporters to, when a blatant, falsehood is spoken, to actually either parenthetically or just state it explicitly that this is just not true. But I also think that when you get into the on one hand, on the other hand thing, and then make a judgment where you say, this is racist, this is white supremacy, you're basically trying to overturn a judgment that's been rendered by one of our two major parties, which is that this person is acceptable to be their nominee of a party. And obviously it's not a unanimous thing, but I don't know if it's journalists' job to make that rendering.
So is it difficult, as someone who's been on air for a number of years at CNN and NBC and elsewhere, to say flatly, this is not true, or In the case of
I don't think it's
something
difficult
Trump
at
supports,
all.
this is white supremacy? Doesn't that put you at risk as a journalist?
The gentleman I'm referring to refers to himself as a white supremacist, right? This is not me saying, wow, he sounds like a white supremacist.
Okay.
He would tell you.
He doesn't even say white nationalist.
He
I
is
mean,
a
that's the
white-
approved
Okay,
euphemism.
so-
Donald Trump racist. A lot of journalists do not say that. A lot of Clinton supporters would like journalists to say that.
Yeah, and I actually think often people jump very quickly to racist. To me, I'm very slow to call anybody a racist. And I think in this case, it's irrelevant. The thing that we're talking about is, are you softening the ground for people who are white supremacists, who are white nationalists, who would self-identify that way to feel comfortable with their views being brought into the national discourse to the point where they can do a 5-minute segment happily on national television? And the answer is yes, clearly, and there's lots of evidence of that. Do I have a question, or do I have a hard time saying to somebody, that's just not true? No, I probably am overeager to do that. I actually think it's one of the most interesting and compelling things about being a journalist and being able to interview people is when you find politicians who seem notoriously challenged with the truth often, to be able to say that's literally not true, and here's how it's not true. I think that's great. It's a great moment, and we should do more of it.
Maybe Americans are divided right now. The divide is real and it is distressing. And it's partly because of Facebook. Yeah, Facebook. Fake news has become a plague on the web, and especially on social networks like Facebook. There are so many unreliable sources about this election. So we need a new rule for the web. Triple check before you share. Let me show you why. Now, there are countless websites designed to trick and mislead people. More of them are popping up every single day. This one claims that a Donald Trump protester was paid $3,500 to protest one of Trump's rallies. But zoom in on that logo. It says ABC News, but it's not the real ABC News. And the URL isn't quite right. Look at it. It says abcnews.com.co. That's the domain name for Colombia in South America. But this site has tricked a whole lot of us, including Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway and Trump's son Eric, who clicked on the link and then shared it on Twitter. The fake story reinforced a right-wing media narrative about anti-Trump protesters being paid off. So Eric wrote, "Finally, the truth comes out." Actually, it was the opposite of the truth. They had to delete those tweets. But this happens to all of us. I've been fooled by these sites before. Maybe you have been too, because they're designed to be shared on social media. I see 3 buckets of them. Number 1, total hoax sites with totally made-up news solely trying to trick you. Number 2, hyper-partisan sites, which aren't lying per se, but they're misleading because they only tell you good news about your side and bad news about the other side. But I think number 3 is the most dangerous kind. These are the hybrids because they purposely mix a little bit of fact and then a lot of fiction. Let me show you one without trying to give it any more attention, okay? This is a site called therightists.com. Now let's click on that link on the right side. It says that the WikiLeaks emails revealed something shocking, that Hillary Clinton wanted Trump to run for president and predicted he would be successful. Now, there's a tiny bit of truth here. According to WikiLeaks, Clinton did say to an audience of bankers that she wanted more businessmen to run for office, but she never mentioned Trump. So the quotes on the website all about that are entirely made up. Now, here's the depressing part. Look at these Google search results about it. I think these disinformation sites are like a spider web, with the initial lie right in the middle, then spreading out in all directions onto dozens of other sites that all link to each other, strengthening the entire web. You can see it here all over these sites. It makes it seem never-ending. It makes it seem true. This is something that we have to reckon with. And when I say we, I'm talking about Facebook and you and me. These sites exist because they're profitable. They're clickbait. Every time we click and share and get angry about these fake stories, somebody makes a little bit more money. Completely fake stories have even ended up right in Facebook's trending box. But while it may be all fun and profits for the fakers, these BS stories hurt the people who read and share them over and over again. Just this morning, a big pro-Trump Facebook page posted about that pretend ABC story about a paid protester, and then dozens of people posted angry comments about it, further reinforcing their worldview and insulating themselves from the truth. These bogus sites are not going away. So all of us have a responsibility to triple check before we share links. And newsrooms have a responsibility to debunk this nonsense. Welcome back. I have a question for you. It's kind of personal. Do you trust me? Do you trust us in the media? This new data says no. This is a Gallup poll, the most depressing poll I saw this week. It shows only 32% of Americans say they trust the media, either a great deal or somewhat. And you can see why here in the data. Democrats much more likely to trust the mass media than Republicans. Only 14% of Republicans saying they trust the news media this year. Now that number is a big drop from last year, which wasn't high to begin with, but because of the decline in trust among Republicans, the numbers declined overall to that record low of about 30%. Now it won't surprise you to hear that Trump is taking credit for that drop in trust. So I want to bring back our panel to talk more about this, and most importantly, talk about what journalists, what commentators, what we can all do in the media to get those numbers back up. Every day we can either regain people's trust or lose even more of it. Back with me, Lynn Sweet of the Chicago Sun-Times, CNN's S.E. Cupp, and David Fahrenthold, the Washington Post investigative reporter, who has been doing heroic work looking into Trump's foundation and charitable giving. David, some people have said your work is Pulitzer-worthy. I know you're a humble guy. You don't want to talk about all the praise you've been getting this week. But I want to ask you about the investigation you've been doing and how you've been doing it. Essentially, what you've been doing is going to all these charities and asking them if they've received donations from Trump. Why are you going to the charities and not Trump directly?
Well, I actually did go to Trump in the beginning. That's how this started. We wanted to, Trump says he gives tens of millions of dollars to charity out of his own pocket, but we asked him, okay, provide some proof. Show us how much did you give? What charities did you give to? And he won't give us that proof. And so I sort of set out to try to prove him right. And I wanted to make my search as open and as transparent as possible. So I made a list on some notebook paper of all the charities I thought Trump seemed the closest to, the ones that seemed most likely to get his money if he was giving any money out. And I started calling those people and posting my results online on Twitter. And that's what I've tried to do, both because I want Trump to know that I'm out there looking, trying to prove him right, and also because I want the public to see what I'm doing, and if they have ideas, to send them to me so I can check them out.
So you've been writing story after story, and I wanted you to tell the behind-the-scenes story of how you've been doing this, because I think it might be one small way for us to try to regain people's trust. What you're doing, David, is showing your work. And the reaction, tell me about the reaction you've gotten from readers.
It's been great, actually, and the most important thing is that people have been reaching out to me and saying, hey, you know, have you heard about this? Have you heard about that? For instance, this week, we're looking for a portrait, a 6-foot-tall portrait of Donald Trump that he bought himself but used $20,000 of his charity's money to pay for. And I need to know where it is, because I need to know whether he's found some charitable use for a 6-foot-tall portrait of himself, or whether he hung it up in his club. And this week, a reader on Twitter spotted another message on Facebook and sent it to me that helped me track down a really important clue, which is where that painting went after Trump bought it.
So let me bring Lynn and Essie in here. Lynn, do you think I'm being too optimistic here? Or is it possible that by doing this kind of investigating and by showing our work in public in real time, we can start to win back some of the people who say they don't trust the media today?
I don't know. But I think what I do know is that we can't stop doing the work just because we're at this all-time low. I mean, this is what Gallup called a stunning development for an institution designed to inform the public. That's what they concluded. I was at a focus group in Alexandria on Friday night, and I asked the people there, why don't you or do you believe in fact checks that the media provides?
What'd they say?
They said, and this is part of what we're grappling with, well, we don't trust the media, so why would we trust what they conclude? That shows how high the bar is now. And David, I commend you because you're putting out things that we might all agree are facts. We have to respect that people don't see things the way we might, and just keep working in our craft to make our case when we have it. And this is true of a presidential candidate down to an alderman, to make it as simple and as airtight as possible and understandable to people with evidence which we can link to now that we have all kinds of social media. So I think the poll, it's bad for us, but it shouldn't stop us from continuing the kind of gumshoeing that reporters always do. We've got 50 days left, and that's true for all candidates in all races, is to keep at it. And in a sense, Brian, not worry about our own poll numbers.
That's a good way to put it. Well, Donald Trump noticed the numbers, not surprisingly. He said he believes he is partly responsible for that decline in trust, particularly among Republicans. Let me ask you, S.E., is it dangerous? Is it actually dangerous for Donald Trump to be helping undermine American institutions, even ones like the media that weren't very popular to begin with?
Well, of course it is. And you know, there's always some consternation over the media every presidential election. Usually it's Republicans griping about Democratic bias in the media, liberal bias in the media, but there's always some. Never before, though, have we seen a candidate for president not only telling people to be skeptical of the media, but telling people to hate us as a body, as an institution. There's no sort of nuance for the role that journalism should play. Trump doesn't understand that. He fundamentally shows over and over again he doesn't understand. I remember when
you don't think he understands, or you think it's all an act? Because when I'm with him in person, the one time I saw him this year, he is so kind, he's so friendly, he's so charming. You don't think he's just doing it for show?
No, he is a charming guy, but no, we've seen too many reveals. Where he gave some charitable amount to, I think, the vets that one time, and was angry that it didn't get the coverage he wanted. He said the media should be congratulating me, and that's just fundamentally not the job of the media. And so to be telegraphing these impulses about the media, these almost like Trotsky era Pravda like ideas about how the media should treat a presidential candidate or a politician, telegraphing that to viewers, I'm not surprised that so many have taken such an unfavorable view of the media writ large, because he's really done a tremendous job turning the populace against this very necessary and important institution.
I like to think we are part of the central nervous system of democracy. We actually do work for the viewers, although sometimes we don't do a good job of explaining that and showing it. So David, let me go back to you. What would you like to see, your colleagues, even your colleagues at the Post, do a little bit differently, trying to earn back people's trust?
Well, I think we're working really hard. A lot of people at the Post, as far as I know, and I've seen this effort going on for months, are writing about all these things that Trump says, all these things that Trump does. I think we've put a lot of it out there. The key is to try to figure out, and I think people are starting to do this, what do you do when Trump says something that's not true and says it again and again and again? And one of the interesting things that CNN has done, the New York Times has done, we've done the last few days, for instance, on the birther controversy, when Trump lies, we call it a lie. And there's no sort of journalistic euphemism about that. It's too obvious and it's gone on for too long. I think you're starting to see a shift where before we sort of wanted the candidate to show some shame about what they had done so we could say it was shameful, and now you're seeing the media sort of push the candidates to a higher standards and say they lied if they lied.
That's interesting. Lynn, where do you stand on that? When is a lie a lie? When do you call it a lie? How do you know what's in a person's heart or in their soul or in their mind?
Well, this is not kind of a new position for me that you make the call. It's what we're paid to do, especially once the rise of social media came. What's the value added for a professional journalist? It's who might have some more resources or access to information. You make the call. And a lie, if you think the word lie also connotates motivation, then we could say, here's a statement that's not true. There are ways to do this. We're writers. We could figure this out. And I think the other thing to do is very special. This is rule number one that I always see violated. Back each other up in press conferences. Do more follow-ups.
That's interesting.
Okay. You heard me earlier in this week when Donald Trump told Dr. Oz that moving your arms is exercise and he didn't do a follow-up question. Of course that's preposterous. And even I would invite people in other kinds of shows who have the people on. Jimmy Kimmel and Fallon. It's fun. I'm not against the fun thing of tossing Donald Trump's hair or asking a lighthearted question, but they have an opportunity to ask different kinds of questions and not just be fawning throughout the whole interview. And I think that means everybody has to just get up the game just to get more information. And for viewers, it doesn't mean we're for or against someone. I'm a strong advocate of just getting more facts out, even if it just means asking Clinton and Trump where they buy their clothes. You'll learn a little bit about a person from answers like that. So we should use these opportunities, back each other up, break down questions, and when need be, confront in the follow-up question, this is not true, sir, and then see what they say.
Well, and Brian, just as a follow-up to Lynn's excellent point of backing each other up, Trump over the course of this campaign has banned a number of media outlets from press conferences or coverage. If in my ideal world of courage, if you're a similar media outlet, maybe you say, then we're not going to cover you either. I know that's wishful thinking in the days of, well, if we can get, an opportunity that someone else can't. But that, I think, would really send a message that you don't get to silence the press. If you silence one of us, you silence all of us. And that's the danger that people need to understand when they look at Trump's actions.
And obviously, if Clinton or Obama or anybody were doing the same thing, maybe the same rules would apply. Real quick, David, before we let you go, because the Washington Post was blacklisted until a couple of weeks ago, along with Politico, Univision, and other outlets, has the relaxing of the blacklist helped you get more information from the Trump campaign?
No, not at all. I got no information before, and I basically get no information now. One of the things I've tried to do to react is I've started posting the questions I send them on Twitter so people can see the questions that I asked and didn't get answered. I do that because I don't want them to be able to take the things they should have told me and then give it to other media as a way of saying that I didn't ask them for the right questions. So I want to show my work in that way as well to show kind of the responses I'm not getting.
And there's one of the examples on screen. David, Lynn, Essie, thank you all for being here this morning. Great talking with you. If there's one thing I know about the election, it's this. You and me and the candidates are only as good as the information we consume. Good, accurate information means better outcomes at the ballot box. False, misleading, confusing information, that's like junk food. Bad for your body, bad for our democracy. I say all this because there's a plague of misleading information all over the internet about voter fraud. And I want to show you some of it in a minute. I think these lies, and they are lies, they matter because, well, they influence voters. Listen to this voter asking Mike Pence a question at a town hall a few days ago.
We all continuously hear about voter fraud.
Right.
And I think that's a great fear that I have, that regardless of how many people come out and support the Trump-Pence ticket, that perhaps this is rigged. I mean, what would stop them?
Let's think about that for just a minute, about why this voter is afraid, why she continuously hears about voter fraud. It's because right-wing websites are beating this drum loudly. Breitbart.com recently quoted Donald Trump confidant Roger Stone saying that you shouldn't trust the voting machines. An even more extreme website, InfoWars, has been posting made-up stories about, quote, Obama's plan to steal the election for Hillary. InfoWars is a haven for outlandish conspiracy theories, really the worst of the worst. Now, if you treat it like entertainment, that's one thing, but it can't be treated like real news. The main host of InfoWars, Alex Jones, bragged this week that he encouraged Trump to talk about stolen votes. He encouraged Trump to sow doubt about the integrity of the election. Now, Jones says Trump was already thinking about it, and since I don't trust what Jones says about Clinton, I don't trust what he says about talking about Trump either. Got to be consistent. But Trump did call into Jones' show last December. We know that for sure. We also know that what Trump has said personally about the prospect of this election being rigged is unprecedented for a presidential nominee in modern times. He's hearing these incredible, actually uncredible ideas from somewhere, maybe Roger Stone or somewhere, and then he's repeating them on the campaign trail.
The only way we can lose, in my opinion, I really mean this, Pennsylvania, is if cheating goes on.
Again, these claims matter because they influence voters, like the woman who asked Pence that question earlier this week. A Pew poll in August found that only 11% of Trump supporters are, quote, very confident that votes across the country will be accurately counted in the fall. Compare that to 49% of Clinton supporters who say they are very confident. The reality is neither side is entirely confident, and that's a problem. This shows that words have consequences. And man, oh man, there are a lot of words out there. Do a Google search for Clinton voter fraud. You'll find dozens of blog posts, almost identical stories from sites like InfoWars, some of them that look like real news. These stories claim that a Clinton campaign worker was caught on camera committing voter fraud in Las Vegas. This allegation, just one of many examples, it spread like a virus on Facebook. America needs to see this, one site says. The YouTube video has almost 500,000 views. This is the echo chamber effect. All these sites, they reinforce each other, and they turn one alleged wrong anecdote into something that feels pervasive, that feels like it's all over your Facebook page. This is why that woman at the town hall said she continuously hears about voter fraud. It's because of the echo that happens in all directions. But what those websites didn't say is what real news outlets actually found out. Nevada's Republican Secretary of State looked into the video and said it did not warrant further investigation. It is legal, it turns out, for a supporter of a candidate to be registering voters in Nevada. The point here is that there's a difference. There's a difference between websites that try to get it right, even if they sometimes fall down on the job, sites that try to get it right, try to give you true information, versus sites that just try to make you angry, make you afraid, make you resentful, make you doubt the very legitimacy of the election. The two kinds of sites sometimes look pretty much the same. I mean, Alex Jones's show looks and sometimes even sounds like real news. Unfortunately, the onus is on you and me as news consumers to figure out the differences, to find reliable information. For the record, voter fraud is rare, and many local and state agencies do exist to investigate it and prosecute it. And yes, separately, there are concerns right now about hackers accessing voter registration information. Not the machines directly, but the voter rolls. You know, there's going to be so much coverage of this topic between now and Election Day, partly because of Trump's dangerous rhetoric about the election being stolen from him. I just hope the press seeks out true experts, not the Alex Joneses of the world, to counter inflammatory talk. Welcome back to Reliable Sources. I'm Brian Stelter. I've been thinking a lot about confusion and who it helps. Fake news websites set out to confuse people, but they're only one symptom of a bigger, broader disease, a breakdown in trust, a breakdown in a shared set of facts. This had been happening well before Donald Trump entered the presidential race, but it is now accelerating. We are entering a terrible new age of information warfare. And it brings to mind that old adage, the first casualty of war is the truth. This war, so to speak, is playing out right on your smartphone, right on your Facebook newsfeed, where made-up stories spread to millions of people. Here are just a few recent examples. The Pope endorsing Trump? Fake. Megyn Kelly fired for backing Hillary Clinton? Fake. Clinton linked to crimes committed by Anthony Weiner? Also fake. But that one was tweeted by retired General Michael Flynn, Trump's pick for National Security Advisor. This is the kind of BS that Facebook and Twitter and Google all have to grapple with. But we have to grapple with it ourselves individually. Those stories I just mentioned are all pretty easily disproven. They're the most basic, pure form of fake news. And when I say fake news, I mean stories that are designed to trick people into believing lies. Deception 101. Now, I have a hard time believing any creator of any fake news website. But one of them, Paul Horner, spoke with the Washington Post this week, and look at what he said. Quote, "I think Trump is in the White House because of me. His campaign manager posted my story about a protester getting paid $3,500 as fact. I made that up." Horner went on to say, "I thought they'd fact check it, and it would make them look worse. But Trump supporters, they just keep running with it. They never fact check anything." Now, to be clear, fake news infects the left and the right. I've seen Clinton supporters sharing fake links this week with election-related conspiracy theories. But the evidence indicates that this is more of a problem on the right, among some, not all, but some Trump supporters. Further research is needed to understand why online lies are so appealing to some voters. But I would suggest to you that it starts at the top. After all, Trump himself frequently misled voters during his campaign, and he has been personally fooled by fictional stories. Remember when he said, "All I know is what's on the internet"? This was in March, after a protester rushed the stage at one of his rallies. The Secret Service thankfully intervened, but Trump then asserted the protester had ties to ISIS. Watch how Chuck Todd tried to correct him.
You praised the Secret Service, but then you said the man had ties to ISIS. That turned out to be a hoax. Did you go over the top there on that? Where did you get evidence?
No. He was. If you look on the internet, if you look at the clips, when
turned out
he's
to be a
dragging
hoax.
an American flag.
Somebody made that up, sir.
He had talk. Well, I don't know what they made up. All I can do is play what's there. And supposedly there was chatter about ISIS. Now, I don't know. What do I know about it? All I know is what's on the internet.
Now, the contrast between the next president and the sitting president could not be more extreme. President Obama is deeply concerned about people believing just everything they read on the internet.
If we are not serious about facts and what's true and what's not, and particularly in an age of social media where so many people are getting their information in sound bites and snippets off their phones, if we can't discriminate between serious arguments and propaganda, then we have problems.
We do have problems. I think everybody feels it right now. One of the problems is that fake news websites are so easy to set up and so profitable for the creators. Every time we click and share, they make more money, but we are worse off. So Facebook and Google are now trying to choke off the ads that show up on these sites, trying to make them less profitable. But that is a losing battle. These fake news sites are always going to exist. In fact, they're probably going to get better at blending in and looking real. The same goes for hyper-partisan blogs and Facebook pages that only tell people what they want to hear, that celebrate their side and demonize the other side. You know, on this program, we used to talk about red news, blue news, but we are now way beyond just red news and blue news. We are in an environment where some people are choosing to be colorblind. Media literacy is part of the solution here. As a society, we need to help each other distinguish between reliable and bogus stories. The more media literate you are, the less likely you'll be tricked by propaganda. And that's what it is, propaganda. Journalism is also a big part of the solution. As an industry, we have to redouble our efforts to restore our credibility. But to tell you the truth, these are not satisfying or complete answers to the problem. I don't have complete answers. I know a lot of us are going to be gathering around Thanksgiving tables in a few days, unable to see eye to eye about basic facts. In this age of information warfare, every person can just pull out their smartphone and pull up a story that tells them they are right and their loved one is wrong. So how does this end? With no one trusting anything? There's more fact-checking than ever, but fewer people trusting the facts. Are we moving more into an authoritarian media climate? More like Russia or China? I don't know. I feel so empty and frankly so pessimistic about this. But I know that people in power all around the world benefit from confusion. They benefit from this confusion. So we must be vigilant as journalists and as Facebook users and as family members at Thanksgiving. Refuse to be confused. Now that's all for that essay this week. I got to tell you, I don't have the answers, as I said, but I'm trying to figure it out. And I appreciate your feedback. So send me a tweet, send me a Facebook message at Brian Stelter on both sites. Whether Donald Trump wins or loses on Election Day, he has already won his campaign against the media with record low levels of trust in the news media, partly thanks to Trump. I'm left wondering, is this an aberration?
Terrible, horrible, unbelievable, illegitimate, disgusting, scum.
Or is that the new normal? Will other candidates copy Trump's shoot the messenger strategy? And if so, what should reporters do about it?
I'm not running against crooked Hillary Clinton. I'm running against the crooked media. That's what I'm running against.
That's what matters. Writers, editors, producers, executives, all of us have to wrestle with what Trump did and how he did it. He used the news media while at the same time running a vicious anti-media crusade. This was his two-sided strategy from day one.
You gotta trust your instincts. You can't believe the press. You can't believe the press.
His rage against the media machine went on for 16 months.
I have a very big group of support. And I think one of the reasons is that, let me tell you, the people don't trust you and the people don't trust the media.
Now, Trump was right about that. He was tapping into resentment that was already there. Take a look at the Gallup data. Trust in media levels were already pitifully low, and Trump helped us see it, helped us hear it. Honestly, in some ways, this was a good thing. Journalists need to better understand how readers and viewers feel. But then, of course, Trump exploited it. He encouraged more and more media distrust, and he outright lied to his fans. He peddled so much misinformation that journalists did take a more forceful approach than usual, debunking his falsehoods.
Take a look at all the crime that's being committed. Go take a look at it.
The research says the crime does not match what you're saying. The research, the Pew Research, which is independent, says.
Don't be naive. You're a very naive person.
Let's call this what it is. The most extreme anti-media talk we have ever heard from a modern presidential candidate.
Do we all love the media? Do we love the media?
No, there's great dishonesty, unbelievable dishonesty in the media. Unbelievable.
Such bad reporting. They're so bad. They're so illegitimate. They are just terrible people. They're scum. They're horrible people.
Look, Hillary Clinton is no friend of the media, but Donald Trump is different. Trump sought to strip the press of legitimacy, of credibility. He claimed the corporate media was part of a massive conspiracy against him, and he went after his targets individually.
Blood coming out of her, wherever.
George Will is a disaster. The guy's a disaster. He's a sleaze, in my book. You're a sleaze. Lester's a Democrat. I mean, they're all Democrats.
And there was this attack against New York Times reporter Serge Kovaleski, when Serge dared to point out that Trump was misrepresenting him.
And now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
If that wasn't bad enough, there was this verbal attack that put NBC's Katie Tur in danger. So much so that the Secret Service had to give her an escort to her car.
What a lie it was from NBC. She's back there. Little Katie. She's back there. What a lie it was. No. What a lie. Katie Tur.
You see, the press pen, the area where the press was, gave Trump an opponent right there in the arena. He reveled in the anti-CNN chants.
You know, they call it CNN, Clinton News Network. That's why the ratings aren't doing very well. They are so biased toward crooked Hillary.
Now, from Trump's perspective, he was under attack from a biased press.
It is called the greatest pile-on in the history of America.
And Trump wanted to do something about it.
I'm going to open up our libel laws so when they write purposely negative and horrible and false articles, we can sue them and win lots of money.
Comments like that led journalism advocates to say Trump is a real threat to press freedom in the United States. Some even said he was ripping off a script from autocratic leaders like Vladimir Putin, who openly suppressed the press in order to bolster their own power. Now, Trump completely denied that. But you can't help but wonder, what would a President Trump White House press briefing room look like? What would a President Trump press conference sound like?
Yeah, I think you've set a new bar today for being contentious with the press corps, kind of calling us losers to our faces and all that.
No, not all of you, just many of you.
All right, fine. Enough of us. Is this what?
Not you, David.
Is this what it's going to be like covering you if you're president?
Yeah, it is.
So to answer my own question, yes, this is the ugly new normal, something journalists have to reckon with. Because while this election will be over soon, the public's relationship with the press will never be the same.